Hello there and welcome to Training Tuesday, everyone. So we're glad that you could make it to this webinar and taking the time to come out and listen about our bridge deck accessories and estimations. My name is Heidi Reese and I am the Training Programs Manager here at Dayton Superior. Just want to go over a couple of items before we get to today's training, such as everyone who has joined the call has been muted so that we can hear Chuck when he's about to present to all of us and get our knowledge on. And at the end of the presentation, there's going to be a mini question and answer. So what that means is you can use the chat functionality in Zoom, ask me questions throughout. We'll get to them at the very end and get them answered for you. As a reminder, we also put we record these and we put them out on YouTube as well as DaytonSuperior.com website. So just search for Training Tuesday and you get two links. One will get you to the registration page for next week, and then the other will give you all of the webinars that we've done in the past. We actually did our 50th one last week, so that's pretty exciting. So thank you all who have come out to share those with us. So let's get started. This presentation is intended for training purposes only, so anything that you find within the presentation, as far as technical specifications and whatnot, you can go to DaytonSuperior.com where you will find technical data sheets, safety data sheets, product pages. So that is your one-stop shop resource for everything that you'll find coming up. So for those of you on the call who don't know who Dayton Superior is or all of the things that we can provide to you, let me tell you. So who are we? We're not just about accessories and chemicals and forming. We are the leading provider of engineered solutions for the concrete construction industry. We specialize in accessories, chemicals, and forming, as well as obviously engineering and training. So these Training Tuesdays are intended for a little bit of a enticer, right? So if you want to go expand on this even more, contact Chuck or myself through training@DaytonSuperior.com and let us know that you want to customize training for your organization, or if you just want to expand on other types of trainings, let us know. Okay, so in today's topic, we're going to be discussing, like I said, bridge deck and accessories along with estimations. So to help us understand it is our own National Training Manager, Chuck Hoke. Chuck has been in the construction industry for over 49 years, with 20 of those as a dealer for accessories, forming, and chemical products. 29 of those years have been with Dayton Superior, where Chuck has worked as a product manager as well as numerous other important positions. Specifically what he is now, the national training. I mean, the man knows everything if you don't know him. I'm sure everyone on the call probably does. His business and civil engineering degree helps contribute to his role at Dayton Superior's subject matter expert in many, if not all, topics and products. And currently, he shares his knowledge through his role, as I said, National Training Manager, and is an integral part in helping customers as well as our internals understand our complete portfolio of product offerings. So with that, Chuck, teach us about bridge deck accessories and estimations.
Well, thank you, Heidi. Thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning for those of you that are on the West Coast. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about bridge deck accessories and how to estimate some of the products that are actually used within the bridge deck. This series here, bridge deck happens to have so many steps and processes to it that we actually had to break it down into multiple training sessions to get it to fit into the half hour. So this being one of them, we're going to get the accessories out of the way. These are all the little component pieces that typically go with an order or with the typical bridge deck forming package. So we're going to start with hangers. Pretty much every bridge has them, whether it be precast girder, steel girder, composite girder, etc. You need to have a hanger to actually help support your formwork or to hang your formwork off of the structure. So typically what we would have, Steel beams would have hangers that would either wrap around the steel beam or they would get welded to the top of the steel beam. Precast beams would actually require hangers that would be cast at the precast yard into the beam. And if you don't catch the beam in time as far as production goes, we do have hangers that will attach to some of the exposed steel that is sticking out of a precast girder, such as rebar, or even with steel construction, you may have a Nelson stud sticking out of it. So, but hanger spacing typically is dependent on the beam configuration, obviously the overhang dimension, how much concrete is suspended off the edge of the girder, the thickness of the concrete, obviously, and the big one here that is really what a lot of people don't take into consideration is the finishing machine running off of the girder, or is it running off of the overhang bracket? At any given point, that finishing machine can actually accommodate, basically be 60 to 80% of the weight that the overhang bracket has to support. So typically the concrete weight is minimal. It's the weight of the finishing machine. So with that, we have overhang brackets. Now, overhang brackets, a lot of contractors own their own brackets and everything else. So the C49 bracket was one of the original brackets in the marketplace. Comes with a 54-inch horizontal leg, so that's the actual formwork that where the bracket will be supported. The vertical leg on a standard C49 is 30 to 50 inches. A C49D is 50 to 70 inches. Those are for beams that are much deeper, where they want to get that diagonal leg closer to the bottom of the beam. And then we have the C49S, and the S stands for shorty. What it is we basically will, and we'll explain here what we do, we modify a standard C49 to get that C49S. All of these brackets have a 3,750 pound safe working load. That is 2 to 1. And all these brackets typically use a standard coil bolt, 1/2-inch coil bolt. And typically I like to use an adjustable coil bolt, because if you're doing bridge work, I'm going to assume that you are not going to be doing just one job and done. A lot of times bridge contractors go from job to job to job. So what will happen is the coil bolt is reusable, as long as it's not bent or corroded too bad. Typically, I like the 24-inch because that gives you a long, versatile adjustment. Basically gives you a lot of adjustment within that bolt to actually make the connection. Now, a lot of guys will use shorter ones. It'll shorten connections up. Depending on what state you're in and where you are working, that may be completely feasible. Depending on if you're working in multiple states or if you have a wide array of bridge designs within your state. We also have a C51 wall plate adapter. This comes in handy for a couple of things. You can cast an insert into a precast box beam and place your overhang bracket off of that, or you can cast an insert into a concrete wall and use the wall plate to attach to your overhang bracket. Now you have your forming package right there, or you can do it, use your bracket as a scaffold bracket. So this kind of double dips as far as what the abilities of what this gives you. Typically it's a 2-component piece. You have the main piece that actually connects to the overhang bracket with that 1/2-inch by 3-inch NC threaded bolt that's already attached to the bracket. And you have a serrated plate. Now the plate has serrations on it to give you a little bit of adjustment there. So With that, you also have overhang guardrail extensions. The guardrail extension gives you a maximum of 20-inch of walkway space. Now, I said walkway, so you can basically put that out there so people can walk on it. They cannot form concrete off of it. It's not designed for that. So basically, it is designed for just human foot traffic or live load. We also have our guardrail receptacle. Typically, I like to have those on every overhang bracket, especially if my brackets are spaced out at 4 foot on center. Overhang brackets, typically, this will bolt into with 2 bolts into the side of the bracket. The holes are already punched in the bracket to accommodate this guardrail receptacle. And here, this is our C52, and I actually prefer the C52 primarily because then the vertical leg on that guardrail is in a strong direction. For guys, just so we all get the gist of what's out there, there is what we call a West Coast style bracket. This is a non-adjustable bracket as far as vertical height and leg length, etc. But what it does have is it has a very hefty adjustment within those yokes that can be moved up and down, that you can actually extend the forming piece. You see a lot of this type of bracket being used with precast girders, and even if it was originally called a California style bracket, because that's where it was primarily designed out there because of the seismic design of the bridges that were used in California. And this bracket typically can mount very similar to this. It mounts with 3/4 inch hardware, so a 3/4 inch bolt going through your beam. Problem is, when you don't want to drill through that concrete beam, you want to have the precaster sleeve it for you so that you can actually, because in that part of the bracket, in that part of the beam, you're going to have a lot of pre-stressed strand, and you don't want to hit those with what you're drilling through. So, but this, as you can see, this gives you a lot of adjustability. It enables you to do a fairly good size haunch with it. And typically, you're going to want to put your finishing machine running off the girder. So the weight of the finishing machine will be sitting right on top of the girder. With all these brackets, you've got bar supports. Here we're showing you slab bolster bar supports. These are typically going to be used on the lower mat of rebar. They follow through the normal code of plain bar support, epoxy coated bar support. Plastic bar support will do anything, basically plain, epoxy, galvanized, and stainless, and our GFR also. So what you're also looking at here is a lot of times they will have plastic dips on the tips on the feet, or they will be plastic dipped. This enables them to eliminate any rust or bleed through on the bottom side of the deck, especially if you have a removable wood form. If you are using an SIP decking, a lot of times guys will use slab bolster upper. Now this upper material typically is used to support the second mat of rebar in a bridge deck, but you can also use it on the bottom mat to support that lower mat of rebar if you're using SIP decking. Because what it does with that bottom runner, it stands the corrugations in the steel. With the bar supports, how do we go through and estimate just how many bar supports are we going to need? Well, you're going to need to get a hold of some plans here. You're typically going to need a cross-section of the plan, and you're going to need a framing plan of the project. To finalize the estimate, get a quote from Dayton Superior. With that information, we can help you out. All of the plans that you typically see, you don't have to worry about. I mean, a lot of times people say, there's over 400 pages or 300 pages in the set of plans. How do I know which ones I need? Typically, to get an estimate done, we need either 2 or 3 pages is about it. So there isn't a whole lot that's required to do a bridge estimate as far as bridge overhang brackets, bar supports, and any of the other accessories that we've talked about here. So typically with your typical deck section, and this is a job here in Ohio from a few years back here, but this is still pretty basic material, and we have a framing plan for the same job. So here we get an overall length of the girders with the overall design of the girder. If it's a steel girder, a lot of times it can be a continuous girder. A lot of times it can be a build-up girder. This drawing here, the section, will actually give you those details as far as flange thickness, etc. So if it's concrete, the concrete girder will be displayed here, and it'll basically have in the section view of the girder, it will have the details that go with that, telling you whether it's a type 4, 5, or 6, or a 7. This will, now on the deck section of it, you're going to get the girder spacing. So this is going to tell you how far the beams are set from each other. You're going to end up getting the deck thickness on this page. You're going to end up getting the deck thickness over the girder. That's going to help give you the haunch that you typically are going to have. And haunch is how far out, what's the elevation of the deck over the top of the girder, the top edge of the girder is going to be. And the reason you have it, that varies a little bit, is because you don't want, the deck isn't going to sit directly on top of it. Otherwise, you'd end up having concrete that was 16 inches thick, real close to the abutments, and then out at the middle of the deck, it would be 8 inches. So this actually helps you maintain a continual deck thickness. This also now is going to give you the bridge width from out to out. So now you know how wide the bridge is. That'll also tell you how wide the finishing machine has to be. And then the contractor can either calculate what the weight of the finishing machine is, or he can contact the finishing machine manufacturer, and they can tell him what the weight is. The one thing about finishing machines is they're a lot like cars. You can buy a stripped down version, or you can buy the best car on the lot. Has all the bells and whistles, but every time you add a bell and whistle, you add weight to the finishing machine. So then we're going to hit on here on the same cross-section view, you've got a top bar clearance, so you're going to get top bar clearance. You're going to get the rebar size, both in the longitudinal bar and the transverse bar. Now, the longitudinal bar is the bar that runs across the deck, and the transverse runs parallel with the beams. You're also going to get the bottom rebar size. And as we said earlier, you're also going to get the bottom bar clearance here. So you've got a lot of the information that you already need to start calculating how much bar support you're going to need. And since the bottom mat of rebar typically has the bottom bar running longitudinally or across the deck, your bar supports are going to run parallel with the girders. So we need to figure out how many rows of girders, how many rows of bar supports are we going to need to put in place. Typically, I like to look at my center-to-center plan, from my center of girder to center of girder, and actually determine how many rows I'm going to put in place here, and then whatever the length of the row is, times how many sections I'm going to put in place, that'll give me the overall length of bar support that I'm going to need for the project. So clear span, we're going to get the clear span here. Usually the smallest flanges, because a lot of times in steel beams, flanges change size from big to little. We're going to work with the littlest ones because that's a worst case scenario, so we don't have to go through and do this whole thing. Beam flanges sometimes can change 4 or 5 times in a girder. Here, we're just going to take one example here and run through with it, not worry about the other ones. So if we have a 9-foot 8-inch or less, 9-foot 8-inch center to center with a 1-foot 2-inch with wide beam. In other words, that's half a beam on one side, half a beam on the other side. We're going to come down to 8-foot 6 inches. And we're going to come in here, what we're looking at here, 9 inches and 9 inches. So we got a 6-foot 6-inch clear span on this shop. Okay, so what we had is 18-inch flanges, so I'm only taking half of each side. Deducting that from the center to center, that's going to give me my clear span. That's the amount of concrete that's actually going to have to be supported by your formwork, whether it be SIP decking, concrete plank, or removable wood form. So typically, on here, I drew it up here as a removable wood form. This can very well be concrete plank. The wood form there in between the girders is just an example. It could be SIP decking or concrete plank. But all the considerations that we have are still going to be in play here. So here, if I've got concrete coverage from the earlier slide was 1.5 inches, that was the coverage, bottom coverage that was on the earlier drawing section view. Then typically, you've got overall lengths here 255 feet. So my rows are going to be 255 feet long. They're going to be 1.5 inches in high, but how many rows do I have? Well, your clear span was 6'6" inches. So if I put a bar support on the edge of each side of my formwork, I've got roughly 6 foot probably still in between. CRSI recommendations are every 4 foot for bar support, so I would put another one in between. So that would give me 3 per open bay. So if I had total number of rows, which in this case here, I have 5 beams. So 5 beams, I think I had 4 beams here. And what I did is I would take the 255 times 3 per bay, and the 3 interior bays that I'm showing, I would have 9 rows altogether. So it'd be 9 times 255, and that's going to equal somewhere around 2,300 feet, and we're going to have somewhere around, you add about 5 to 10% for lap, and you're going to end up with that size 1.5 inch bar support. Now let's figure out what we're going to have for the upper material. The upper material here typically is going to be from out to out of the bridge deck. And this bridge deck here was 33 lineal feet. So I'm going to assume 35 feet, take care of my lap lengths right there. So typically you're going to have, take the dimension of the length of the bridge, which was 255 feet. Take 255 feet, divide it by 4, because you gotta space your bar supports at every 4 foot longitudinally. So that's gonna be 63.73. And that shouldn't be linear foot, that's a mistake that should be 63.73 rows. So we got 64 rows roughly, because what we want to do is we're gonna round it up. You always then add 1, so that's gonna give you 65 rows to start, times the 35 feet side to out dimension. That's gonna give you about 2,275 feet. That's gonna be required. Since we had a 2-inch haunch, that we saw this from our bridge, from our cross section. Typically, we have 1.5 inch bottom cover. Typically, I'm going to use, and the thickness of my beam flange is approximately 1 inch. I'm going to use a 4.5 inch chair out on the fascia, on the overhang, to actually support the bottom part of the deck's rebar that's hanging out over the deck, over the overhang. And I got that from the 2-inch haunch, 1.5 inch bottom cover, plus the 1-inch beam flange. Now, with all this great information that we have here, this is only an example of, and this can change from job to job. So with Dayton Superior, we actually offer a full line of technical data sheets, handbooks, e-marketing, product pages. We've got contact information. We have a full-blown engineering group that can actually help you do any of the estimates or takeoffs going forward. Throughout the system, you will see our bridge deck handbook, probably one of the best handbooks in the business for getting information through and through. And we have online our TDS, technical data sheets, that are available for download and use in application. Design calculations and drawings typically could be done here. We can actually provide a drawing and computerized calculation for your bridge job. That is a billable charge. And we can also get a PE stamp for that. We have a full staff of PE covering all 50 states across the U.S. So we can actually get these products stamped and drawings stamped for your DOT submittals. On the website, you're still going to see additional, all the data here that we have available, and we actually can do a more in-depth training getting into it. Now, these were only the accessory component pieces here. Next week, we're going to talk about bridge deck overhangs, and from there, we will move forward to interior after that also. So we've got a lot more pieces going into this bridge deck, and you're going to see a lot of these slides are going to be duplicated, because this kind of gives you the foundation for all of the next classes.
That's a great segue, Chuck. So yeah, just to expand on that a little bit, we have the Bridge Deck series going on. That doesn't mean that you have to go to this one and go to the next one. It does help if you go to all of them. But like Chuck said, there is a minor duplication just to get you really into it, to understand how to estimate what you need, how to work interior versus exterior. So like he said, next week is the exterior bridge deck. I'll have that registration up real quick. But if you notice on your screen, just want to let you know, for April, we have special pricing on some of the stuff that Chuck talked about. Our superior deal for April is on the PEZ Aztec, easy chairs, as well as the easy chairs with a stand plate that goes with that easy chair. We also have the Aztec easy chairs. Boy, it sounds the same. And then the SC speed chair. There are additional special pricing on select PPSC Aztec stand chairs. So talk to your sales representative and they can provide you with details on that. While checking the chat, you're welcome, Bevan. Sorry about that. We don't hand out our presentations, but you can definitely go out to our YouTube channel or on DaytonSuperior.com, like Chuck said, with the resources. Search on Training Tuesday, and all of these Training Tuesdays are out there. They're quick, informative, I hope, and get to the point. And then if you want some more expansion, contact us at training@DaytonSuperior.com. Is there any other questions? Yeah, Hunter, thank you. I saw you guys. I don't have a camera or else I'd wave back at you. I know the one gentleman came in and sat next to you and waved. And we waved here too, but you didn't see us. Okay, well, if that's it, just remember to look online later. Thank you for your time, and I hope to talk with you next week. Thanks, guys.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye now.